Good evening and welcome to Prime Business. I am Emma Davis. To our stories, the Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Ernest Addison is optimistic fresh measures introduced to stabilize the city will yield the desired results. The governor said after the Monetary Policy Committee kept the rate at 29%, he is optimistic that things will turn around. George Wiafe has the rest of the story.
Speaking at the news conference, Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, maintained that these monetary measures will complement other fiscal measures being implemented by government.
At the 3i Summit, we got some time to interact very much with a lot of the remittance transfer operators. And it's clear that most of them work with both the fintechs and the banks. So these foreign exchange resources associated with remittances are placed in the nostril balances of our commercial banks, and the banks have access to those resources to finance imports. So it comes to the broader Ghanaian banking system. I'm not sure if the central bank wants to go and chase those resources also to build reserves. At the moment, we don't intend taking those resources from the commercial banks.
The governor also ruled out suggestions that the IMF program is making it difficult for it to intervene to support the local currency. The Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Ernest Addison has also been justifying the decision to direct forest bureaus not to publish their rates on social media and engage in outdoor advertising.
I'm not sure if that assessment is right. Yes, we have some indicative targets in terms of the amount of intervention that the central bank will do. But these are not performance targets, right? So they are not deal breakers. So there is some flexibility in terms of those intervention budgets. I think
Sarkodie has described the policy rates being kept unchanged as a prudent decision. He has been speaking to my colleague George Wiafe again.
Well, we all expect a single-digit policy rate, but the circumstances in which we all find ourselves does not warrant a further reduction in the policy rate because we are still in the process of fighting inflation. The fight against inflation is to be done by all, but BOG is just using the tools available to it, which is the monetary policy tools. And so they mentioned the uncertainties which has been fueled by the geopolitical tensions. They mentioned the fiscal consolidation, which is on course. And so every businessman and woman would expect a lower policy rate to cause a lower lending rate and also a lower borrowing cost. But unfortunately, BOG can do little about it because the disinflation has slowed. The disinflation is steep. It's not steep, it's slowed. In other words, our fight against inflation is yielding results all right, but not as fast as we would have wished. And therefore, they are careful not to reduce the policy rate because even globally, most central banks are embarking on tight monetary policies. The reason the US dollar has been strengthened recently because their Fed increased their policy rate, and therefore many economies in the world, many central banks are embarking on what we call tight monetary policies. And so, yes, the rate is high, but at least it's better than lowering it and allow inflation to go to 50%. You don't want that. You don't want inflation and the city to depreciate further to eat away the value of the capital. You prefer inflation and depreciation to be tamed as against a relatively higher policy rate. So we always have to strike a balance. So this is more or less a lesser devil.
Let's come to the governor's assessment on the economy. In one breath, he was talking about sentiment being mixed, not being that good. And in another breath, he thinks that, well, the outlook is not that bad. What do you make of the assessment of the Bank of Ghana in terms of the economy, where in one breath sentiments are kind of shaky, but he was still optimistic that the outlook is not that bad, especially when he said that. I'll come to a bit about inflation, but let me still get your thought on his
You realize that last week the finance minister spoke. This week the governor is speaking. The two managers of the two sides of the economy, the fiscal side and the monetary side, are speaking. And then what I get from the speeches is to inject some confidence into the economy. Apart from all the numbers that they channeled out, I think the sense is to inject some confidence into the economy. We need that. One of the critical reasons for getting into the IMF program is to get investor confidence. You know that. So it's not, even the IMF program is not really about the money. It's also about the confidence so that we can get, business with outside worlds.
For the third consecutive time, Chief Operating Officer of the Multimedia Group, Ken Ansah, has been adjudged CEO of the year 2023 in the media radio sector at the 8th Ghana CEO Summit. The honor bestowed upon Ken Ansah was a testament to his unwavering leadership, business acumen, and commitment to professionalism in the media radio sector throughout the past year.
CEO of the Year, Media, Radio, Multimedia Group, Mr. Ken Ansah.
Ken Ansah's visionary approach and exceptional ethical practices had indelibly impacted the business community, fostering growth, investment, and job creation in Ghana. Established in 2016, the Ghana CEO Summit annually convenes over 500 top CEOs, heads of state, entrepreneurs, and business leaders from across West Africa and the globe.
While the feedback on Entrepreneur in You has been great, today we rehash our lesson on one of the fundamentals of doing business and being an entrepreneur. That is, knowing the difference between your profit, your margin, your net profit, and your net margin.
So we tend to not realize that profit is different from margin and they have different functions within your business. Hello. Hello, have you asked yourself the difference between profits and margin? It's because these are terms that we use interchangeably every day. So we tend to not realize that profit is different from margin and they have different functions within your business. Your profit is the amount of money you make after you subtract your cost of goods. So say I were to sell clothing, I would go to the wholesaler, buy them in certain quantities, bring them to your shop, and then sell them at a higher price than I bought it. If you bought your clothes at 600 cedis, and after selling all these clothes, you got 1,000 cedis. That means you made a profit of 1,000 minus 600. So you made 400 cedis. The difference between profit and margin is that margin is a function, it's a percentage, it's not an actual amount. It means you made 400 cedis divided by 1,000 cedis, which is 40%. So margin is basically the profit divided by your sales price expressed as a percentage. That makes margin a very important ratio to have as a business person. And margin is the same as profit margin. The term is used interchangeably most of the time, but your profit is an actual figure, margin is a ratio, it's a percentage, and your profit margin is the same as your margin. But what if on the way, I decided to buy an iPhone or a new shoe or a new watch and made it a business expense? That is why your net profit shows the actual profitability of your business, including all expenses. It includes the clothes you bought at 600, your electricity, it includes your taxes, your permits, your transportation, salaries, everything. If at the end of everything, subtracting all of these expenses, you made 200 cedis, and still sold at 1,000 cedis, it means that you made a profit of 400 cedis, but a net profit of 200 cedis. So your margin might be 40%, but your net margin in this case is 20%. So as an entrepreneur, as we fundraise, investors and your friends and family that wants to chip in will need to be shown these ratios to prove that, yes, you, number one, understand how the business atmosphere is, but also to understand why the ratio of your margin and your net margin shows how efficient you use your money and also shows how efficient your sales process is. So it means that for every CD that comes in, 40% is profit, 20% is pure profit. I'm sure you're thinking what I'm thinking. There might be some inefficiencies in the extra 20% that you might be able to carve out to make more money than you would normally make. So if someone says I made a margin of 200 CDs, you have to ask the person, maybe that's your profit. What's your actual margin? Because margin is a percentage and profit is the actual figure. And margins show how efficient your sales process is, whilst profit does exactly what the word says, how profitable or the potential profitability of the business. That's it for today. Keep well.
Brought to you by Africa School of Entrepreneurship.
Follow Dr. Maxwell Ampon and the Entrepreneur in You series right here on Mondays and Thursdays on Joy Business, Prime Business, as well as radio and all our social media platforms. I am Emma Davis. That's it. Have a good evening.